Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we ask the question, what's the best Nintendo game of the decade and why is it Pocket Card Jockey? It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling cool, calm, and collected.
Sure.
Which is interesting we've set ourselves with like a huge task.
Yes.
But it feels not as monumental as some of the other things. Like this one feels much more straightforward.
Yes.
Than some of the other tasks that we've laid out for ourselves.
Right. As I alluded to up front, we are determining what is the single best Nintendo game of the decade. When we'll get to what that actual process will be in a second. But first, I guess some housekeeping. Sonic Forces, my copy of it, you know you want to borrow it. It's for the Nintendo Switch. All you got to do is write to us, email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com. And give us a physical mailing address where we can send the thing. You play it for as long as you want. You send it back. Costs you
nothing.
So do that. Mark, we've got some listener emails that you and I need to attend to here. First email we got here is from Turner. Turner writes, "Hey, Patrick and Mark, I've been listening to the shock and awe over last week's discovery that the Mario brothers are in fact twins. But as surprising as this may be to learn now, the truth is we've known about this fact since 1995 when a little game called Yoshi's Island hit the scene. In the prologue, the game sets the stage. We learn that a stork is flying through the pre-dawn sky, supporting a pair of twins in its bill. That until that sneaky Kamek flies through the air to try and snatch them both. Kamek escapes with the baby Luigi, while baby Mario plummets to the ocean sea below. Oh no! But then baby Mario is saved when he lands on unsuspecting Yoshis below on Yoshi's Island. Skipping ahead a little bit here. Sorry to douse water on the uproar that this news brought on, but it does in fact appear that the Mario twin brothers are indeed a real thing. Hope the cries of a baby Mario lull your minds to ease. Turner." And I know that this was also brought to our attention on Twitter. Who was it that shouted us out on Twitter? Do you have that right there?
Paul at Paul C. Pace.
Great. So, yes, I guess if we are to believe that being delivered by a stork at the same time means that babies are twins. I mean, remember when we were talking about it, I was like, does this make you think too much about the Mario Brothers biology?
Yeah, are you soothed by the fact that they're delivered by storks?
No, because that just raises more questions for me about what the role of storks are in this universe. This is the only time we've ever seen a stork in Mario, right? The whole thing upsets me. I don't know how much more I can talk about it. So thankfully, thank you, Turner, and thank you, Paul. It is right for both of you to point this out to us. But we got another email from Daniel. Daniel writes, "Hi, Mark and Patrick. The global new year is sure off to a bad start. So I'm hoping you're having a happier local new year. And I have a favor to ask of you. My sister knew it would take me 10 years to buy a Switch if left to my own devices. I literally bought the 3DS last year. So she got me a Lite and a bunch of games for Christmas.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Obviously, this is the best thing that has ever happened, but my backlog is now officially a disaster. Can you definitively rank it for me?"
I would be delighted.
Okay, so the backlog includes both Switch and 3DS games. Do you want to rank them separately, or do you want to zipper them both together?
I think we got to zipper them both together.
Okay, well then buckle up because I think we got like 10 games here.
Okay,
we have to definitively rank. Okay, so on the Switch, it's Breath of the Wild, Octopath Traveler, Link's Awakening, and Cadence of Hyrule. And also Stardew Valley followed up in another email. It's like, and Stardew Valley as well. And then on the 3DS, the original Phoenix Wright trilogy, Mario 3D Land, Paper Mario Sticker Star, A Link Between Worlds, and Bowser's Inside Story.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm going to go ahead and say bottom of the list has got to be Bowser's Inside Story, Mario Sticker Star. Just those two for sure. Bottom of the list for
Yeah.
me. Top of the list. Do you want me to run them down again?
Well, top of the list for me, what I would put as number one is Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like the defining experience for Nintendo of this generation of like the Switch. So yes, and then close second for me personally would be Stardew Valley, which I think you could play simultaneously as you're playing another game. For me, Stardew Valley was a great game to just like pop into, do what I needed to do for a couple of in-game days, and then pop out to something else. And so I think that can be a complementary experience.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that both Link Between Worlds and Link's Awakening are on these lists, because to me those are both great, like shorter palate cleanser kind of games, especially when the rest of the games you're looking at here are like Breath of the Wild, Octopath Traveler. Like those are some long experiences. But okay, let's try to do a definitive ranking here. So number one with a bullet, Breath of the Wild. I will concede that, yeah, number two probably should be Stardew Valley. And then I think a lot of the 3DS games are going to be at the bottom of the list for me.
Other than Link Between Worlds.
Yeah, which may actually be number three.
Yeah, except maybe we want to break up like the Zelda experiences. But as far as like just for his own sanity, but as far as like gaming experiences go, I think I would put it third.
Well, here's the thing. There are 4 Zelda games on here. Breath of the Wild, Link's Awakening, Cadence of Hyrule, and Link Between Worlds.
So Cadence of Hyrule, to me, having not played it, I'm going to put it towards the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I think that's right. Probably at number 8.
Yeah,
right?
and Octopath Traveler feels very like middle of the list to me.
Yeah, I would put that at number 4. I know you're going to put Phoenix Wright probably higher on the list than I would. And I'll probably put Mario 3D Land a little bit higher on the list than you would.
But I think we should put Phoenix Wright below 3D Land.
Okay, so here's what I think the list is. Number 1 is Breath of the Wild. Number 2 is Stardew Valley. Number 3 is
Link Between Worlds.
Link Between Worlds. We still don't have Link's Awakening like in here solidly, but I think number 4 is probably Octopath Traveler. Yeah,
I'm actually going to say that Super Mario 3D Land should go next, and then Ace Attorney, and then Octopath Traveler, because I like Octopath Traveler a lot, but I feel like these are just better experiences. They're just different experiences, right? And you've probably played a game like Octopath Traveler before.
Sure. And where do you put Link's Awakening? Because I mean, I kind of put Link's Awakening like right under Link Between Worlds, and I know that's putting 4 Zelda games in the 3 Zelda games in the top 4.
I would actually recommend that, if like you haven't played any of these games before, I would have Link's Awakening lower and have somebody experience those like other types of games before another Zelda game.
Now, just point of order, we are not being asked to program the next couple months of his life. We are just definitively ranking these games.
Oh. Well, we're too far down the road that I've been going.
Yeah, sure.
To back out now.
So whatever we said.
No. Let's
all right, okay.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild first.
Then
Stardew Valley. And then
Link Between
Worlds.
And then Super Mario 3D Land. And then Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. And then I'm going to say Octopath Traveler.
And then Link's Awakening.
Yes.
And then
Cadence of Hyrule.
And then Sticker Star and Bowser's Inside Story in that order.
We both programmed this person's next few months and definitively ranked them, I think.
So thank you, Daniel, for writing in with that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And if anyone else just wants to give us a random list of 10 games and wants us to rank them definitively.
Really, honestly, just give us a random list of anything. And
that's true.
It'll become a 433.
Hey, speaking of that exact practice, let's determine the best Nintendo game of the last decade. Okay, so you said earlier that this was maybe an easy task.
I think it's
Or
easier just because it's
straightforward.
more straightforward.
Yeah. So what we're gonna try to do here is we're each going to bring 5 Nintendo games that we think are the best Nintendo games of the decade.
Right. So we'll at the end we'll have a list of 10.
Yes.
The one so if I have a game that's on Patrick's list, or Patrick has a game that's on my list,
We both
then,
have backups.
Yes, we have backups. That way we have 10 unique games going into the end.
Now, I fully suspect that once we get our list of 10 games, I will want to talk about more Nintendo games.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should start with our runners-up. Runners
up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I have it sort of broken into 3 categories: my top 5, my backups, and honorable mentions.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to run through our honorable mentions real fast.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I mean,
a good point.
If you know what you're not going to.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I can do honorable mentions. I don't have mine broken up that way, but I can do honorable mentions in the sense that I have some games that are not published by Nintendo.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That I included in my list. So, yes.
Okay,
let's do that.
Well, let's hear your not published by Nintendo games.
Okay, cool. So, I'm going to start with Doom from 2016.
Interesting.
That showed up on Switch. This generation, like this decade, when we're looking at it, is such like kind of like weird time for me personally with gaming. At the start of it, I was on the tail end of the DS Wii era.
Yep.
And I bought a 3DS not at launch, like a couple years after launch, but otherwise I was kind of on a sabbatical from gaming. I didn't really play other than my PS3. Definitely a sabbatical from like Nintendo gaming.
Well, and I almost feel like Nintendo was on a sabbatical from Nintendo gaming, right? Like,
right, but like I missed out on a lot of like the games on the Wii U when they were happening.
Yeah. Again, like most everyone did.
And a lot of games like on the 3DS initially, like I did not play any of Super Mario 3D Land until this past year.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was interesting when I was looking at like all the games that have been released in those 10 years is I feel like I fell out of love with certain genres and then like fell in love with them. And Doom for me was like me falling in love again with first person shooters. I was surprised how much I loved Doom 2016.
Yeah.
Really loved that game. Also, I have on here Epic Mickey for the Wii.
Sure.
From 2010.
Yeah.
Which is one that is not actually a great game. It's a fine game, but it's not amazing. It's definitely not, I feel like, what it could have been or what they originally, wanted it to be.
But it is still like a weirdly ambitious, like just considering the amount of content that is in there and like the number of things that it would like, it's sort of like a Kingdom Hearts but just Mickey.
Yeah,
you know
totally.
What I mean?
And for like a big Disney nerd like myself, I found it really interesting, if nothing else.
Yeah, man, we need an Epic Mickey 2020, right?
Yeah. Yes. And then I have Katamari Damacy Reroll. I've talked about this game before. It was my introduction to Katamari Damacy, but it doesn't feel, one, it's not Nintendo published, but two, it just doesn't feel right to put a game like that, on
if
like
if
the
you
best
recall,
of the decade.
Our listener Jason already gave us crap for putting that Katamari Damacy song on our best Nintendo music tournament. And not just putting it on there, but it got very
far.
Finals.
It got very far. And then finally, so this was on my list of top 5 of the decade, but because it's not Nintendo published, I had to take it off. And that is Ghost Trick Phantom Detective for the Nintendo DS from 2010. A very like weird, specific game that is doing its own thing on its own rhythm, with its own like sense of humor and sense of place. Your play is like this guy who is dead, and so you're now a ghost, and it's like a puzzle game where you're sending like waves of electricity through like rooms, so you can try to like manipulate NPCs to do certain things to like get past the puzzle.
Yeah.
But it's so delightful. And it's so self-assured, and it bombed so hard. But it's a really, really cool game that I really loved and wanted to make sure to shout it out in some capacity.
Okay, cool. So then I'll mention my honorable mentions that and there's one that I have on my honorable mentions that I'm not going to bring up right now because I think it's possible that it ends up actually in our conversation. But these are games that, well, I love and that I think are very important, don't really like fit the bill for whatever reason for game of the decade. First, of course, it's got to be Tetris 99, baby. I looked at my total gameplay time on that recently because the Switch will keep track of those things for you. 285 hours.
Wow.
And the game's been out for less than a year. So, like, do the math. I've played an average of 45 minutes of of Tetris 99 a day since the game it came out, or since the day it came out. A wonderful game, but like obviously of limited. You can use it to play Tetris, and like Tetris Surprise is still a great game 30 years later. Also on this list, Super Mario Run. I loved actually playing Super Mario Run for whatever problems they had, like making the money back that they wanted to from its like pricing structure. Like the actual moment to moment gameplay I loved. And the Toad Rally, I played Toad Rally for months after that came out. It was like the quintessential like just keep playing, just try for a better score, just collect more toads, just keep building it out. I loved Super Mario Run. But it would feel disingenuous to actually nominate it as one of the best games of the decade, you know? Also on this list, the original Super Mario Maker on the Wii U, which I don't know that I consider it a better game than Super Mario Maker 2? Not really, but I think the sort of like scene around the original Mario Maker is more significant than the scene around Mario Maker 2.
I think one of the things that Mario Maker, the original, had going for it is just that it was the first of its kind.
Yes.
And so the sequel, I think, made a lot of quality of life improvements, but it can never recapture like the joy of discovery in the first one.
Yeah. Well, and like there's no escaping that Super Mario Maker 2, for all of its improvements, still feels like it's missing something. Like knowing that it says more game styles and there's just one in there, you're like, well, okay, where's the rest of that? The fact that it doesn't have like the ability to make a world that is like multiple Mario levels connected. The fact that as I'm making a level, I still feel a little bit constrained by how long it can be. Like, it should, and this is whatever. But like if it were like a fully realized new Mario Maker experience, I wouldn't be seeing the edges of it like that as readily as I do. But the original Super Mario Maker is a phenomenon and it's incredible. And then Metroid: Samus Returns on the 3DS, another game that I loved and like committed myself to 100%ing. And like I don't do that with games. I don't 100% games. I 100%ed Metroid: Samus Returns. Part of that I know is my affinity for Metroid: The Return of Samus on the Game Boy, which this game is a remake of. And like that's a game that I loved as a kid, but was never really able to revisit because like trying to replay that game now is impossible, right? Samus' sprite is so big, there's no map, and the whole thing is like these clumsy battles with Metroids. And they improved all of that. Downside, of course, is that it's on the 3DS in the like 3DS is no longer relevant era, and is also just revealed by the fact that I was able to 100% it in about a week. Not a huge experience. And then my last honorable mention, we mentioned it before, is Pocket Card Jockey. And this is a game where you race horses by playing solitaire. And it's a wonderful game. Feels more like a time waster than anything else. And I guess that's the theme of a lot of my honorable mentions. Tetris 99, Mario Run, and Pocket Card Jockey are all wonderful time wasters, but maybe little more than that. Okay, Mark, are you ready?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
You know what? I'll let you go first.
Okay, so the first on my list is also the first chronologically that I have here. It is a Wii game from 2010. Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Also first on my list.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's talk about Super Mario Galaxy 2. This game's amazing. It took the premise of the original Mario Galaxy and just like the premise had been established, and instead of having to invent something wholly new for Mario, they just perfected it over and over again for hundreds of levels.
Yeah, it feels very much like exactly what they said it did when it was revealed, where they were like, we just had too many ideas
Yeah.
for Super Mario Galaxy, so we had to make another game before moving on from it.
I you know, I played it when it came out and like demolished it. Got like so far, and so many of the when you collect all the stars, you get another complete set of stars to collect. In all the previous levels, so the game is its own like baked. Well, it's already like a super sequel to the original Galaxy. It is also its own sequel in and of itself. Um, so collected all of that. Anyway, today I was like, I just want to make sure, right? Like I have wonderful memories of this game, but I want to play it. So I fired up the old Wii U and put the Wii disc in, and struggled with my Wii remotes, and was like, oh man, standard definition. All the sort of like sticker shock that not real sticker shock, but all the kind of time travel shock of playing a game from 10 years ago. Um, and that all wore off immediately when I started running around and jumping around tiny planets and just having an awesome time collecting stars.
So, I really appreciate Super Mario Odyssey and Super Mario 64, but the Mario of my heart is course-based Mario, and I think that Galaxy 2 is kind of like the perfection of that formula.
Totally. It also does the the sort of thing that like one of the joys of Mario is like secrets, and that like there's discovery even within like a course based format. And Mario Galaxy 2 does this so well that there's always like one or two little things as you're like making your way towards the goal where you're like, wait, what about right over there? Like what if I just go over there? And then like you're rewarded with another star or like one of the comet medals or whatever. The game is so good at like doling out reward for just going off the beaten path, but also the path itself is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's just super fun. And the music rules in this game, and like, man, it's if Nintendo were to announce a Super Mario Galaxy 3, I would lose my mind.
I would love it. I mean, honestly, I would love them to just put it on the Switch.
Totally.
I don't know how you would do that necessarily, because one of the things that, just praising the Galaxy games in general, is it's such a smart and intuitive use of motion controls.
Absolutely.
Like, I love the little flick
Yes.
to make Mario just go a little bit higher.
Yep. And like just attack too. There's something about it that feels so much more natural than like using it to make Link swing his sword or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is just like you're just batting something away and then Mario just does it.
Yeah.
And would I want them to do that with like the motion controls on the Switch?
Not really.
Not really. But like even the pointer controls to collect star bits or have the second player collect star bits and freeze enemies for you is a perfectly enjoyable way to like play, like kind of passively, but still play it with the first player.
Yeah. Oh man. Yes. Such a good game. So I also have a Wii game on my list, and that is Rhythm Heaven Fever.
Oh baby,
from 2011.
Yes.
So Rhythm Heaven is I was introduced to it with the DS entry, and the Wii entry is kind of like the last original one. They had a WarioWare Gold-esque Rhythm Heaven. I can't remember what it was called, like Forever or something like that. Which was kind of like a compilation with a few extra new games on the 3DS.
Yeah.
But here's a series I would love to see come back. But if Rhythm Heaven Fever is the final, like, all new entry, it is a wonderful, wonderful entry in that series. Like, what a way to go out. Rhythm Heaven is like my favorite rhythm game. It's just so fun. It's really cute. The games don't like wear out their welcome. The music is amazing. It's weird. It's funny. I love it. I love it so much.
That's a great pick. I've never really gotten into the Rhythm Heaven games, and I feel like I am hurting for like the series to come back.
I know
to
that's the thing
it.
is that like it's such a good series, but it basically just like stopped existing.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Switch, with its broad audience and like so many players who are coming back to Nintendo platforms and are new to Nintendo platforms, it fills that thing that I feel like we're missing by not having a WarioWare game on there.
Yes, 100%.
And it's like it's such a fun party game. Like it
Yeah.
really just like we just need it. We need a new Rhythm Heaven game.
Well, and like there is something about that like kind of like quick, like twitchy party game that like is absent on Switch right now, especially from like Nintendo first party. Like you say, no WarioWare, no Rhythm Heaven, but also no like Nintendo Land too. Like there are a lot of experiences from Nintendo's past that aren't on Switch right now, and they feel like they should be.
Yes.
So okay, here are our first two nominees. They are Super Mario Galaxy 2 and Rhythm Heaven Fever, both Wii games.
Yeah.
Okay. Now my next nomination is going to be Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS. I've had a wonderful time this year playing Fire Emblem Three Houses, but my heart will always belong to Fire Emblem Awakening, which not only has the sort of time-tested turn-based combat that Fire Emblem is known for, but it does this amazing thing with the pairings, and as you have characters romancing each other, both through like story beats and like dialogue trees, and actually like standing next to each other in battle, that raises their relationships. They have their children time travel from the future to the past to help you, and so your character's stats and their relationships change based on who you have made their parents.
That's cool.
So like the kids are already predetermined, like they always have the same mothers, but their fathers could be anyone, which is amazing to feel like you have that much control over just the total identities of these characters. And it's something that happens through, it's like the thing that we praise Fire Emblem Three Houses for, that like you are invested in the characters both in like a story way and in a gameplay way. And I felt that on like a generational scale with Fire Emblem Awakening. Just an awesome game.
Now, Fire Emblem Awakening, was that your first Fire Emblem
That
game?
was my first Fire Emblem.
Okay,
yeah.
so I have Fire Emblem Three Houses on my list.
Yes.
And the reason I have it on here, and you could argue some of its recency bias, but for me, like strategy RPGs, like Fire Emblem's genre was something that I was not really interested in. I was like curious about Fire Emblem as a series because it was something I hadn't experienced. But even before this game came out, I was like hesitant to buy it. But one of the things that has been like so much fun, and I feel like is like the great joy for me of Fire Emblem Three Houses, is like discovering my love of the game and like these characters. Because a lot of times, like when a game comes out, we're like really hyped for it. We're almost like already bought in on it. That was not the case for me with Three Houses. And, I was playing initially, I mean, I still am playing on easy and casual. And, in the beginning, I was just like auto battling through all the battles.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that's been really fun is like discovering like the further we've gone on, I've gotten like more and more hands-on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really feel like I'm like learning to love a genre that I didn't really have interest in before. And like, yeah, I have loved everything about Fire Emblem Three Houses. I think it's like a really amazing experience.
I do think that Fire Emblem as a series, especially in the last certainly since Awakening, but probably going back further, is sort of a series that straddles multiple genres. That it is turn-based strategy and also this like relationship sim almost, or like a social kind of game. And I think that Fire Emblem Three Houses is the first game like that, the first game in the series to really embrace both ends of it, maybe even the social aspect more, right? That like you can approach it even if you're like, I don't know if turn-based strategy is for me, and then slowly like introducing you and being like, no, maybe it is for you. Maybe you do really like it. So that's cool. I love that we have two Fire Emblem games in our list of top 10. Is it my go now? Okay. I'm gonna skip this one and do. Okay. My next nomination is a little bit of a cheat. You could argue that it's 3 games. I'm nominating NES Remix Volume 1 and Volume 2 on the Wii U, and NES Remix Ultimate on the 3DS. So NES Remix was a series of games that took classic Nintendo games and distilled them down to their bite-sized, wonderfully memorable moments and just presented them as discrete challenges. So it would be something like, you know, hop over this turtle in Super Mario Brothers, and you would do just that one moment, and you'd quickly be graded on it, and then be given a new challenge. And it is everything that I wish it's what I like want to see in the NES Switch Online, like uh, repackaging old games in a way that makes them feel new and exciting. And because it's remix, they'll mess things. They'll put Link in a Mario game. They'll put Pit from Kid Icarus in Balloon Fight or whatever. They'll just mix these games together and just these like tiny little challenges. And so it's like a perfect like little museum of what Nintendo was and like what Nintendo could be at its best. Like there are just so many games that you can get an awesome picture of everything that's good about them through the like 10 minutes that you're playing in NES Remix.
I wish so much that they would put these, like the Wii U entries, on the Switch, even as part of like the Nintendo Switch Online subscription service. Because I maybe played a little bit with you at your house, but for the most part, like I haven't experienced it. And every time that you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's so super fun. And then it grades you on like a scale of 0 to 3 stars. And as you are earning those stars and like collecting bits, then you get. And this was something that the Wii U was very good at. That I'm a little bit bummed to not see on the Switch. But that it would give you stickers that you could use in Miiverse. And that like stickers were sort of this like meta game currency almost, because you could also earn them in like Super Mario 3D World and like a couple other games.
Yeah, it was kind of like their like half answer to trophies or achievements.
And it's perfect.
Yeah.
I am so bummed that they don't have that on Switch. And I guess if you're not like writing messages, there's no like application for them. But there's something cool about just looking at your sticker book and being like, look at all these stickers I got.
Yeah, totally.
It's super fun and super collecty and like just feels quintessentially Nintendo. NES Remix volumes 1 and 2 or Ultimate are all. I'm just putting it on there as one game.
All right. Next on my list is, of course, Nintendo Badge Arcade.
Wait, for real?
No, I'm just kidding. The rabbit is holding my family ransom. He said I had to do it.
That sounds like something the rabbit would do.
No, my pick is
excellent troll, by the way.
Yeah, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. The platformer that I have enjoyed the most in the last probably like 5 years for sure. I think it's like such a remarkable achievement of art in like the melding of music and like art design and level design in a way that I don't think I've experienced in any other platformer, save maybe a few like transcendent moments in Odyssey, like the Jump Up Superstar sequence and everything. And yes, I do think the game gets less remarkable in the latter half. But like those first few worlds are so like just like amazingly rendered and like a complete package that they're totally different, tonally very different, telling like such a great story. Plus it's elaborating on all like the things we liked about Donkey Kong Country Returns, but like perfecting the formula. And I really love the Switch version. That was the version I played because, it adds, I didn't really use Funky Kong, but the game is notoriously difficult.
Yes.
And they've like rebalanced it with additional characters that you can play with that have additional abilities that kind of like, and everybody has like an extra heart. Like they've just like done a bunch of things that for somebody like me who I don't want to grind against a game like this. I just want to be able to like experience the world. Like it's so beautiful. It's kind of a bummer for people who stopped early.
Yeah, it's a little bit the
Mm.
like Cuphead effect there, right? That like that the audio visual pleasures of the game there that the game like holds are so great that like you want to grind against it, but also sometimes you just get frustrated.
Yeah.
I this isn't on my list, but like yeah, what a great game, man. It's so good, and I'm really glad they brought it over to Switch instead of letting it sit on the Wii U. Speaking of, my next entry is Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker. And I'm going to call out here specifically the Wii U version because I know it has been ported to everything else since the Switch and the 3DS. But the Wii U is like the perfect use of the gamepad. And it just makes the like puzzle solving, which is so based in just how you have the camera oriented and like where like the game is all about positioning the camera between like Toad and the thing that he's trying to get, and like all Toad can do is walk to it, right? Like it's his tool set is so limited and he's such a scaredy cat. It's very simple, and its pleasures are mostly in how adorable it is. But like I don't, it's another game that I felt compelled to get everything in it, and like every challenge that the game presents is fun and doable and adorable. I love Captain Toad Treasure Tracker.
So I have one more on my list, and then we'll have to go to the my like runners up
Sure,
in order to determine. So, but I will nominate Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
is also on my list.
It is just like the I think foundational game of the generation in the way that like Ocarina of Time was before. Um, the sense of discovery and exploration in that game is by far my favorite thing about it. And
Yeah.
there's so much to love. But as soon as I had climbed all the towers and opened up the entire map, like the game felt lesser to me. I still enjoyed it and played it all the way through and got like all of the um uh like temples. I'm blanking on what they're called right now.
Yeah, shrines.
Shrines.
Yeah.
And did all the DLC and all that kind of stuff. But it just wasn't the same. And I've thought about like replaying it, but again, like art and like knowing what's out there, I feel like some of the joy of replaying it is removed, and so that's why I'm really excited for the sequel, and I'm
Yeah.
hopeful that it takes place in a completely different Hyrule, because I feel like it has to, because I think Nintendo is also very aware that it, like is what that game is like the
Yeah,
exploration.
totally. Well, and you know, there were so many like articles and like videos and stuff that came out after Breath of the Wild that really broke down how the game is so good at guiding your eye and guiding curiosity and presenting you with all these very natural like decision trees where like you come to a natural fork in the road, and then your eye is drawn one direction and you see something there, your eye is drawn the other direction and you see something there. And the game is so good at rewarding you for every corner that you explore. There's something new to fight, there's something new, there's a new weapon or a korok or you know like something. The game keeps giving you stuff for looking around.
And not just looking around, but like experimentation.
Yes.
One of my like absolutely favorite things about Breath of the Wild was just like the community around it and the discussion around it, and like people discovering that you can do this thing, or if you there's like this weird thing in this area. If you are Link and you're not wearing a shirt and you stand on tables, people freak out. And it's just like all these like details that Nintendo put in the game that I just love that sense of like, I wonder if I can do this. And the answer in Breath of the Wild 99.9% of the time is yes, you can.
Yeah.
And it has a surprisingly fun result.
And you know, for being as like open and like based in its own physics as the game is, I mean, I'm sure people have broken the game, you know, to high heaven, but it ran like incredibly smoothly for me. Like it should be way buggier than it is, right? Like at any time, an obvious point of comparison is like Skyrim, but like that game is notoriously buggy, and like horses will be catapulted off into the space for no reason, and Zelda just feels like it is so much more like deliberate, and like they wouldn't allow the illusion to be broken that way. You know what I mean?
Right. Like I feel like people have broken it in the sense that they have taken advantage of like the physics systems,
Sure.
but it's not like glitchy necessarily.
Yeah.
Or the other thing that I really like about it is the sense of growth that you feel. Like you come into the game and you feel like powerless. You feel really weak, and you're trying to climb things. You don't have enough stamina and all that. And then by the end, you're like climbing mountains no problem.
Yeah.
You have all these like awesome abilities.
You can put on different outfits that make the volcano, which was so scary before, that would just hurt you nonstop. You don't need to worry about that. You can go into the frozen tundra and not worry about freezing to death.
But there are always some enemies
yes.
in the game that can still kick your butt.
Oh man. I mean, also, Breath of the Wild is it's one of those games that like is going to be in our conversation about like the best game ever. So of course it's gonna
Totally. Yeah.
Of course it's gonna be on our list of top Nintendo games of the decade. All right, so now I'm gonna pull from my runner-ups, and I think I only get one pull on here to add to the list, since now I gotta decide which of these games I'm gonna put in.
It's hard. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Because I have this game on my list, but I didn't include it in my 5. It's The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time 3D.
Okay.
And I still don't think I want it to go in there for the same reason that like I wouldn't put like Katamari Damacy or anything like that, because it is
because Nintendo didn't make it.
Because it is like like that experience already existed, right? This is just like a like refined version, and a much more refined version. I think it is. We've said before, like the definitive way to play it. But I just need your like agreement. I should not go on the list.
I am going to agree with that.
Yeah.
Also, in that same breath, the Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD are the definitive ways to play those games. And the Majora's Mask 3D, they are great versions of these Zelda games. But yeah, I don't feel like they are.
It seems not correct to have them in this conversation.
Those games belong to a different decade.
Even though I think it is one of the best games that I played this decade.
Yeah, and I mean, I think those are 4 of the best games I've played this decade. Okay, I will next go with The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds.
This is great because it saves me from
having to choose it. We were just talking about this game earlier in the episode. Thank you, Daniel. But it is just a perfect. A lot of these games, a lot of the games that I've mentioned specifically, have sort of a backwards look to them, right? Like NES Remix is giving you all these NES experiences again in a different package, and in a lot of ways, A Link Between Worlds starts as a repackage of Link to the Past, right? Which is already one of my favorite games ever. So like, it's going to put this game is already off on a positive foot for me. But the way that you can traverse locales by becoming a painting on the wall adds a 3-dimensionality to the space, which totally reinvents it, right? Like that. There are spaces that you remember, but now that you see through a totally different light and mean something different, which is an incredible, remarkable thing. And I'm sure the experience is lesser for people who don't already love the game, but I don't think I am just having like a nostalgia reaction. I think I am having the intended reaction of, here's a thing that now I'm twisting it completely.
Yeah, and I think that's true throughout the entire game. When this was the first time in a very long time that you were able to choose the order that you wanted to do the dungeons.
Absolutely.
It introduced is it Nabbit? What's the name of
the Ravi?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who like runs the store, and you don't have to do temples in a specific order to get the item that completes that temple. You can like rent it or buy it with rupees. Low rule is really cool. Like the story is great.
The story is amazing. Like just to kind of double down on that for a second. That like that low rule is a sort of dark reflection of Hyrule, and not just in a light world, dark world kind of way, like in the original Link to the Past, but in a way that is much more like meaningful, and that there are analogs for the three main characters in Zelda that like feature into what you're doing in just really amazing, meaningful ways.
Well, I also think you were saying earlier that you were already bought in a little bit because of your love for Link to the Past. For me, I think it was the opposite. I was a little more hesitant. Like when it was first revealed, it was kind of like, what? Like you're excited because it's a new Zelda game, but it's like, why does it look like it looks?
Yeah.
You know,
His name is Ravio, by the
oh,
way.
Ravio.
Ravio.
Why does it look how it looks? Like the art style at first was a little off-putting.
Yeah.
You're like, is this just like playing in the world of Link to the Past? So initially I wasn't as like sold on it because I loved Link to the Past so much, but it totally, like, my fears were so unfounded.
Yeah.
Like it's and it plays with 3D in a fun way. You're not really punished for not using it, but when you do turn it on for certain like palaces or temples, it just looks really cool.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to think that like we put so much like emphasis on what like the 3D Zelda is doing, that like Breath of the Wild obviously goes in this conversation of best game of the decade, but like Link Between Worlds I feel like is no less deserving of a spot on this list. And is just the 3DS is weird, man. Like there's so many good experiences on there, and it I don't know, it feels like a quieter platform for whatever reason.
Okay, so that leaves me. I'm debating between 6 games, and I'm maybe.
I mean, after this, I have another 5 games to mention.
Yeah. So, would it be weird if I tell you what the 6 games are and we kind of like hash it out together?
Sure. So, and like I said, I have 5 more games. So, you give your 6, and then I will tell you which of those I have on my list of 5, and we will just discuss those.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay.
So I have Super Mario Odyssey,
As do I.
Super Smash Brothers for Nintendo 3DS.
Interesting. I chose Ultimate, but
Okay.
yeah.
So just why I chose the 3DS version is because again, I had been kind of like I just hadn't been playing much Nintendo in those like gap years basically. But one game I did play a ton, and one game that got me through like jury duty was Super Smash Brothers for Nintendo 3DS. And yes, obviously Super Smash Brothers Ultimate is such a remarkable achievement.
Yeah.
But having Smash Brothers on a handheld system for the first time was transcendent.
Absolutely.
Especially feeling like a fully formed, not compromised. You knew it was, but it didn't feel like a compromised version of Smash.
Yeah, that is also the Smash game that I think I've gone the deepest on. Like that I feel like I was doing a lot of traveling that year or something. Or maybe it was just like one trip to Florida, which means, a million hours on a plane.
Right.
And like just being able to play that game, just like head down, unlocking characters, making me characters, which I really got into for a while. And just like customizing them, and saving, using like a amiibo to like have to create these like AI characters. It's just super fun.
So next on my list is Labo, Nintendo Labo.
Oh, that is interesting.
So I think the reason why I think Labo is again a like incredible achievement of engineering and design, and is like most of the packs are super fun to put together. I think where Labo for me doesn't really make the grade is that like the experience of building something, especially the first time, is so fun, and like it feels like a magic trick because you're like doing all these weird things, and then when you put it all together, you're like, this can't possibly work. Oh my gosh, it like really works.
Yeah, it is two magic tricks, right? Because the one magic trick is building something, and you're like, oh, look, it all came together. And then the second magic trick is, by the way, it does something in the game,
Yeah.
which is incredible.
But I think like the more you do Labo, like the less
Yeah.
like once you know how the magic is done, it's just like less remarkable. And I think also for me, my experience with Labo was the fun was around building it.
Yes.
And then the software, like it never really grabbed me. And I never like really got into like the lab part of it, like building my own stuff and
Yeah,
like
the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is very cool, and I love that like Weird Nintendo exists and would come out with something like this, and we're just like, yes, this is like you're playing with cardboard, and at first you're like, what? And then you're like, this is amazing. But I don't think it's really one of the best games of the decade, even if it's one of the most interesting.
Yeah, I will also add that, well, I love putting together the Labos. All of the more complicated ones, the car, like steering wheel, the piano, all of them, as we approach the end, I become impatient.
Oh yeah, you're just like, come on, yeah. You're like, I get it.
I get it. Yeah. The way you present these instructions is real cute. Let's just finish it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But that's only like the last 10% of it. I'm having fun up until that point.
Next on my list, I have Splatoon 2.
Great.
I love the world of Splatoon.
Yes.
It's another one where I'm just like, yes, Nintendo was like, we're making a third-person shooter. It's like this weird squid thing. People are like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It comes out and everybody's like, this is amazing.
Yeah. It like muscles its way into being charming, right?
Yeah.
Like it should. I think we should hate it, right? Like it's got that so obnoxious like 90s Nickelodeon cool, but like it just does it with such authority and style that like it's undeniable. It's so fun and so cool.
Yeah. So that one I could really see a case for.
Mm-hmm.
I also have Mario Kart 8/Deluxe on here because I think it is the like Mario Kart perfected.
Yeah, I also have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on my list.
And then I also have Animal Crossing New Leaf.
Oh boy. So do you want to talk about New Leaf a little bit? Or
I think it again, just like Mario Kart and Smash Brothers Ultimate, is like Animal Crossing perfected to this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm so interested in New Horizons. I think they are being smart to do something like kind of radically different, like a completely new setting. That was one of the things going from Wild World on the DS to City Folk on Wii. Like City Folk felt like just kind of like a farty, like elaboration on Wild World instead of something totally new, which I think you kind of have to do for like the console version. And so, but I think New Horizons is a great step forward potentially, and that New Leaf is going to be like the perfected form of what old Animal Crossing was.
Sure. So of those, that's all 6 games.
Yeah.
So of those, I had Smash. Of one form or another. I put Ultimate, but Super Mario Odyssey and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on my list. The other 2 games that I had on mine are WarioWare Gold, which again maybe suffers from being too late in the 3DS's life cycle, but has all of the WarioWare in it. Do you want to play any of the WarioWare microgames you've ever played ever? They're all on this thing, and has just so many different ways to interact with it. It can be touch, it can be tilt, it can be like traditional controls. Just a wonderful entry in the series. And then, of course, Super Mario 3D World on the Wii U. I mean, is there like a jar I need to put a coin in now? Because I've mentioned this game and sing its praises highly enough. Just an incredible single player experience, an incredible multiplayer experience. I don't know that I've laughed harder playing a video game than Sarah and I trying to like get up to some platform somewhere, and like just taking turns like jumping off of each other while like in the air, and we're just like laughing hysterically. And at one point, out of my mouth tumbled the phrase, "Get a load of these idiots," like referring to the characters on the screen that we were controlling. And it's just pure joy for me, in both like the silly way and in the feeling like you accomplished something through playing a game kind of way. And just as I would kill for a Super Mario Galaxy 3, I would similarly kill for another Super Mario 3D style game. Okay, so what does that mean is our 10th entry here? Or do we just make it 12 and put Odyssey, Kart, and Smash on there?
Hmm.
Or do we take Smash off because we can't decide on which version?
Yes, let's do ourselves that small mercy and remove Smash Brothers from consideration. Don't we have room for you to choose one more and me to choose one more?
We have 9 right now.
Oh.
We have Galaxy 2, Rhythm Heaven Fever, Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Three Houses, NES Remix, all of them, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, Breath of the Wild, and A Link Between Worlds.
Oh, okay, cool. I think my vote is Mario Kart 8 /
okay.
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
I will back that play. But quickly, let's talk about Super Mario Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
And why it maybe ends up not being on the list.
So Super Mario Odyssey for me is a game that I learned to love, but initially like admired it for its craft, but had a hard time like really getting into.
Sure.
And I think part of that was just the mistake in the way that I played it, which was like I would go as I was discovering the kingdoms, I would try to like get as close to 100% as I could in each kingdom, which is not to tell you that there's a wrong way to play the game,
but that's the wrong way.
That's the wrong way to play the game.
Yeah,
like you should definitely go all the way through the story and then come back. It has the highs are so high, but it just wasn't like consistent enough for me to like really love it.
Yeah, well, for me, one of the reasons that I don't have it like in my like solid top 5 is that it's an amazing game, obviously, and the worlds are huge and expansive and glorious. But one of the things that I enjoy doing in it most is just making Mario run around. I love making Mario run and jump, and part of that is because he loves it so much. He'll shout and laugh and just have the best time, and I feel that immediately. But I feel that more in Galaxy. He's just frequently unrestrained by gravity, and is just flying through space and beautiful and wonderful in Galaxy in a way that he is more often hampered by the environment in Odyssey. Again, I love that love that game.
Yeah, it does so many great, like it's such a love letter to Mario.
Yeah.
The music is amazing, and surprising. Like what I love about Odyssey is like how surprising it is. It is a love letter to Mario, but it is not a slave to Mario's past. Like it does such interesting things like you go to that hyper realistic area with the dragon.
Yeah.
And it's just like a one-off. Or, Koji Kondo he's not writing the more traditional Mario themes. He's writing the Steam Gardens theme, right? With like, like it's like everybody having fun. The costume mechanic is amazing.
Yep.
So it is a great game, but yeah, for whatever reason, it just isn't like consistently my favorite.
So one thing that just to recap our list right now, our 10 best Nintendo games of the decade are Super Mario Galaxy 2, Rhythm Heaven Fever, Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Three Houses, NES Remix, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, Breath of the Wild, Link Between Worlds, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe / Mario Kart 8. So one thing I did want to point out from just like going through and making these lists is that I feel like there's not huge variety in the franchises or like types of games that like clearly rise to the top as like the best Nintendo games. Like it's a little bit weird that like I mentioned a Metroid game as like a runner up. But like I would never try to make an argument for that being one of the best of the decade. There's no Star Fox on here. Um, there are, I feel like Nintendo for the last decade has been leaning, as they kind of always are, pretty heavily on putting their quality behind Mario and Zelda
That's interesting. I think
and Fire Emblem.
yeah, like I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I think for sure that is like their core competencies that they have been perfecting for over 30 years now. It is in their blood,
Yeah.
and so it doesn't surprise me that that's like the list. That's like the cream that would rise to the top. But you say that, but by the same token, a lot of like our runners up were like bold experiments
Yeah.
that paid off for Nintendo. But I think it makes sense that those aren't going to be like our games of the decade because they don't have that 30 years of history behind
Sure.
it, with maybe the exception of Fire Emblem, which I think makes sense for us in the sense that like Rhythm Heaven is in here too, and
Yeah.
the NES remix. But I think like Fire Emblem is the one where it's like, I think everybody has kind of discovered Fire Emblem in the past 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. But it is still like one of the things that I notice as we're going through this list is that obviously we didn't put any of the like Paper Mario games in here. And just that, Nintendo isn't not making RPGs, we're not you and I aren't invested in them. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And like by our rules of published by Nintendo, we could put Octopath Traveler in here. We could have technically put Dragon Quest 11 in here,
or like Xenoblade, or anything like that.
But like,
I did come very close to putting Dragon Quest 9 on here, except it was published in 2009,
oh,
so it didn't count.
Ah, dang. But yeah, I mean, like that, and they're also, those are published by Nintendo. They're not. They feel even less developed by Nintendo than, like Xenoblade, or whatever. Like the Fire Emblem games are developed by Intelligent Systems, which is owned by Nintendo. But it feels like just slightly less like in-house.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think we are just seeing like a narrowing of focus as like games become more complex, and Nintendo is dedicated to like this like HD development.
Yeah.
One of the things that hampered Nintendo in the Wii U era that other companies like especially Japanese developers, they went through that teething process in the generation before was the switch to HD development, which is so resource intensive. Like the teams get so big, and it's one of the reasons that in the previous generation, in the PS3 generation, there was all those questions about like, is Japan's dominance in game over with? Because there were companies struggled so much with the change, and Nintendo struggled with that change. And I think we're continuing to see the effects of that in the sense that, like, Intelligent Systems, they're probably just going to make Fire Emblem games because, they're not big enough to do it all anymore.
Yeah, totally. I also think another thing that is very interesting to me is that the Wii U, for being as derided of a piece of hardware as it is, houses a number of the games that are on this list. NES Remix, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, all from like our final list here, up here in the top 10. In my backup, Super Mario 3D World, and then Super Mario Maker as well. And Mario Kart 8 obviously started there too.
Right.
So like,
and like Splatoon, the Genesis, like all that kind of stuff.
And like it is crazy to me how many absolute bangers were on the Wii U, and like it just couldn't catch a break. The hardware was just a little too like clumsy, and third parties weren't developing for it. So like, yeah, it's one of those things that is like, it's just so weird to me that this machine that everyone hates had so many good games.
Well, especially because like the Switch would not exist without the Wii U.
100%.
It's like they had to take their lumps for those like 5 years or whatever.
Yeah. And just quietly making all of these games and inventing new franchises like Mario Maker and Splatoon on a platform that no one was paying attention to, so that when they launched the Switch, they're like, oh, by the way,
yeah,
here's all this amazing stuff that no one knew was here.
Yeah.
Okay, we put it off long enough. We have to determine which one of these 10 games is our Nintendo game of the decade. Mark, do you want to be boring? Because I have a boring answer that is hard to argue against.
Let's hear it.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it is hard to argue against Breath of the Wild. The only other one that for me personally could maybe take it is Galaxy 2.
Oh, that was exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, Super Mario Galaxy 2 is just, it's pure joy. Every second that you're engaged in it is active, hyper joy. And I don't think that is true of Breath of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Breath of the Wild is more subtle than that, and therefore like a more effective artistic statement, I think. But there's something to be said for being happy all the time.
Right. I know. And I think, very early in the run of this podcast, we named Breath of the Wild like the best Zelda game of all time. And
Definitively.
definitively. And and I think that list still holds. Even after our 150th episode, Purging or something.
Yeah, when we undefinitived some of our lists.
And at the time we were like, oh, is this like recency bias? But I think obviously like it is held up. But it's too early to say. I have said it, like we've all said it before, but it is too early to say like, oh, this is like the new foundation in the same way that Ocarina of Time was.
Yeah.
But it feels that way, whereas like Galaxy 2 feels like the period on something. Like it feels like the end. And so it's
well, especially, I mean, having now the 10 years since then that we see that it is a period, right? We see that was the last statement on that sort of gravity bending course based Mario that stopped there.
Yeah. And so it's like, which one do you reward almost, right?
Yeah.
Like the perfection of something or the beginning, like the exciting like beginning of something new.
I will also say that well, I was able to look past it pretty quick playing this morning. The standard definition on Super Mario Galaxy 2 is a bummer in 2020. That, it's I would just love to see it
in like glorious HD.
Man, it would be wonderful. So, I don't know, what do you think?
I think for me Breath of the Wild is my choice. I love all of these games dearly. But it's just really hard to argue against like all the surprises that Breath of the Wild like provided.
Breath of the Wild is also one of those games where we get friend requests on our Switches from people listening to the show. Thank you to everyone who does. I love seeing what games people are playing and all that stuff. So,
and you can find our friend codes in the episode description of all of our episodes.
And one of the things that I think is an amazing commonality is how many people have played Breath of the Wild, and that everyone who does has over 100 hours logged in it. Like, it is not a game that you can play part way. Like, it grabs you and it like takes you on this amazing adventure through a world that you like can't stop exploring.
And I love that everybody's experience is different.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not possible for you to have like the same experience as somebody else.
Right. And in the early days when it was like, well, where did you go first? You fought like a giant sandworm? I can't tell you how far into that game I was before I even encountered one of those things.
Or before, when I knew that there was like a horse, a deity.
Yeah. And like, discovering how to like hunt dragons and like all of that stuff. I mean, the discovery period for that game as we were all doing it at the same time was amazing. And maybe that's even one of the things that will make the game not hold up in the future, that like it will have been mapped by websites and walkthroughs, and not everyone is finding it all at the same time. But man, for March of 2017 was an amazing time to experience that game. All right, so we talked for an hour, and we came to the most boring, obvious conclusion that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the best game of the decade. Mark, would you like to close out this segment?
Yes.
But of course, that's just our obvious and boring conclusion. I would love to hear your obvious and boring conclusions. So you can email us and let us know what games we might have missed, or if there's something that we weren't giving enough credit to, or if we should just shut up about Breath of the Wild already. You can email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com
and let us know. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already. And if you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter. That kind of thing helps us out tremendously. On Twitter, I am at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nin Cart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers, reminding you that Rusty's Real Deal Baseball also came out this decade, and we didn't talk about it, and it's a crime, and saying thank you for listening.
Hiya, I'm Hallie Labont from Mega the Podcast. I'm a weekend producer at Twin Hills, a fictional mega church in Broad Ripple, Indiana.
And I'm Gray Haas. I'm the youth pastor of our church's teen ministry called Climax.
On every episode of Mega the Podcast, we improvise with a new guest comedian playing a different character from our community.
Tune in and hear episodes with guests like Cecily Strong.
How would you me off or whatever? Sorry, am I allowed to say that? I don't know.
You know what? It's covered in the blood. Rory Scovel.
I said, hey, we could build houses, or we could build our faith in Christ out on a golf course.
Eliza Coop.
The way I plow the snow
Yeah.
is I'm not doing it by any other guidance except from God.
And Scott Adsit.
Physics is the proof of God.
Wow.
Because it's perfect.
Oh. Well.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
We couldn't think of physics.
Right.
Only he could think of physics.
Isn't that right?
We're on Campfire Media.
Listen to Mega wherever you find podcasts.
Campfire.